Welcome to Full Frontal. I'm Samantha B. This week, President Trump went on Laura Ingraham to bring comfort to a weary nation. And by comfort, I mean made up a bunch of shit.
Who do you think is pulling Biden's strings?
People that you've never heard of, people that are in the dark shadows. They're people that are controlling the streets. We had somebody get on a plane from a certain city this weekend. And in the plane, it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, black uniforms with gear and this and that. They're on a plane.
All I got from that is that Trump fell asleep watching snakes on a plane and had one stupid-ass nightmare. The president also referenced recent protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where Jacob Blake was shot multiple times in the back by police, leaving him paralyzed.
The police are under siege because of things. They can do 10,000 great acts and one bad apple or a choker. You know, a choker. They choke. You know, there's a whole big thing there. But they choke. Just like in a golf tournament, they miss a 3-foot.
You're not comparing it to golf because, of course, that's what the media
I'm saying people choke.
That's the first time Laura Ingraham has ever reacted to someone the same way people react to Laura Ingraham. As we draw nearer to the election, Trump continues to intentionally ignore the actual reason for the protests, anti-black police violence. Instead, he has demonized the protesters, even inciting violence against them, all while the Republican Party barely mentioned Jacob Blake at the RNC, and conservatives use these protests to fuel and terrify their base.
Look at what's happening in American cities. Crime, violence, and mob rule.
Riots are everywhere. They're not protests, they're riots.
This is the sign of Joe Biden's America. It's an America in surrender, where we surrender our streets to the mob.
The hard truth is, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
No, this is literally Trump's America. You can't just blame the next president for what's happening to our current president. Unless you're Abe Lincoln, who famously said, "It's Andrew Johnson's fault that I'm dead, that little bitch." Since the shooting, there have been calls across the country demanding justice for Jacob Blake. But it's over a week later, and Rustin Chesky, the officer who shot him, still hasn't been charged, which is bullshit. Also bullshit when Kyle Rittenhouse, a white 17-year-old, allegedly killed 2 protesters and wounded 1. Police were slow to apprehend him, even as witnesses shouted that he had shot people. In fact, before his shooting spree, cops welcomed Rittenhouse, offered him water, and told him and other wannabe vigilantes that they appreciated them. We've known for, all the years that the police treat black people far differently than white people. Federal agencies, after a decade of prodding, are finally publicly confirming that white supremacist violence is as great a threat as international terrorism. But what is most terrifying is that white supremacists and anti-government militia groups have active links to law enforcement across the U.S. At this point, white militias basically consider themselves the police.
Rumors today that busloads of Black Lives Matter protesters were coming to town brought out Nate Fox and his assault-style rifle.
Nate, what are y'all doing?
Trying to protect our city.
Social media posts claim violent protesters were being bussed in from the city to cause damage and loot businesses.
The only type of busing militia members should be scared of is the magic school bus that Miss Frizzle threatened to drive into everyone's aortas and then re-expand while still inside. Seatbelts, everyone. Even though police departments should know right-wing extremists, not Antifa, are the real threat, it makes sense. They just can't seem to quit their white militia friends. Militias often present themselves as pro-police and identify as Back the Blue groups, which is not to be confused with the Back the Blue Man group. Of the two, I've only been a groupie of one. I'll leave it to you to guess which. And these aren't isolated incidents. In cities all over the country, police are giving armed white jackasses a free pass to intimidate and attack protesters. In Salem, Oregon, police were caught tipping off a group of white militia members so they could get away before curfew.
My command wanted me to come talk to you guys and request that you guys secrete either inside the facility or in your vehicle somewhere where it's not a violation. I don't think so we don't look like we're playing favorites.
Which makes no sense because the next thing that cop did was send them an edible arrangement. Gross. Edible arrangements are just loose fruit fondled by 11 strangers. And the police aren't just giving armed vigilantes special treatment. In some cases, they're teaming the up.
A Metro sheriff announcing plans to form a posse with citizens.
The term posse, does it stir people up a little bit? I know that it does that. And I intentionally used that term because I knew it would be a grabber.
Wow, that sheriff's posse sounds lame as hell. The only posse I roll with is Leo's pussy posse. I wasn't there for the pussy. I was there for the lifelong friendship and the pussy. If you liked this video, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments below. And if you didn't like this video, I'm sure you've already left a comment. Thank you so much.